Welcome back, everybody, to another shocking prison reality check episode of Lockdown 23 and 1. That's right, once again, I got a lineup of shocking stories coming from the state penitentiary. One of the stories is actually considered to be kind of like a prison myth. Dudes will say this will happen to you when you get to the penitentiary. You know, it never really typically does. But in one of the stories today, it actually becomes a terrifying reality. Not to mention, I got a few other shocking stories that's definitely going to help deter people from prison. So let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. If you're new to the channel and enjoy all things lockup and crime related, then this is absolutely where you need to be. Hit that like, subscribe, notification bell before you leave, and check out my beautifully assorted playlist with many more videos for you to start watching today. Now, the first two stories kind of go along the lines of the myth that I'm speaking about, and that is a lot of guys used to tell inmates that haven't been to prison before but they're about to be, that some dudes, if they don't like you or they find you attractive, they'll knock you clean out and take advantage of you sexually. I know it sounds like something out of a movie, right? Well, in Miller County, Arkansas, it became a reality. It says a Miller County inmate in custody on child sex abuse charges is accused of physically and sexually assaulting his cellmate last month. And I've covered many cases in the past where these, sexual offenders get locked up and continue their sex crimes even behind bars. It's like they never learned, they live to do what they do. But also keep in mind, Charles Anderson, he's 62 years old. Keep thinking these elderly guys ain't capable of doing these kind of activities. A lot of people never experience that old man strength. It's kind of like Goku doing a Kaioken times 10. But it says Charles Anderson, 62, allegedly knocked his cellmate unconscious, tied him up to his bunk, and sexually assaulted him. According to the probable cause affidavit, a nurse and correctional officer observed the man's feet were tied down when they were dispersing medications around 6:30 p.m. When the officer entered the cell, he saw that Anderson's cellmate had been gagged with a piece of cloth and that he was tied to his bunk face down at his neck, waist, and ankles. His hands and feet were bound with pieces of cut-up sheet. Anderson and his cellmate were allegedly locked in their cell at the time of the incident. The alleged victim reported that he was lying in his bunk when he felt Anderson's knee in his ribs and looked up to see Anderson's fist coming towards his face. Put yourself in the CO's shoes going into that cell. Chances are the blanket was covering his body, because it said all they seen was his feet tied down. So when they probably lifted up the blanket and his whole damn body was laced to the bunk, man, they're probably tripping in disbelief, right? I know I would have. Things like this happen, but seeing it firsthand, man, it hits a little different. Kind of like me seeing someone get beat unconscious and the dude never stopped. Fighting in prison after seeing that hits just a little bit different. I thought not only twice, but 3 times before swinging a fist after that. But once again, I can't imagine walking in the cell seeing a dude, gagged up and strapped up to the bunk. So that CO and nurse, look, shout out to y'all, man, you're heroes. Now, like I said, the update is Charles Stephen Anderson, 63, will be in his 80s before he's eligible for parole. First and foremost, he should never be eligible for parole. How he is beyond me, but he's 63, and it says he could be out in his 80s. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison after pleading guilty to sexually abusing a 4-year-old girl and the whole taking the cheeks of the cellmate situation. This fool was only sentenced to 25 years in prison. Yeah, it could be a death sentence, being 63 years old now, but it doesn't matter, man. You can't risk it. Deviants like this should never walk the streets again. But like I said, this story is going to lead us into the second one where it's very similar. This actually just happened a few months ago, coming from Cumberland County, Pennsylvania. An inmate at SCI Camp Hill is facing charges after he allegedly raped and sexually assaulted his cellmate. According to the affidavit, on September 3rd, 2025, Kelly Gibson, 36, was placed into a cell with his cellmate. Gibson was allegedly transferred from Delaware County Prison under a Z code classification, which is something I've never heard before, but every state kind of has a different little classification system. Z code, which is reserved for inmates with a known history of violence and behavior that warrant single cell isolation. When Gibson was entered into a cell with his cellmate, he reportedly yelled to staff that he was supposed to be in solitary confinement. So there you have it right there, Gibson warning the staff immediately that he is not supposed to be housed with anybody. It continues saying that Gibson has a history of violent conduct, including threats of rape and arson, according to court documents. Later that night, and again the following morning, Gibson reportedly forced his cellmate to have sex and threatened to kill him if he retaliated. Gibson reportedly claimed to him that he had gang affiliation with the Bloods. Probably to put more fear into the situation. You know, many prisons in many states, especially on the East Coast, is ran when it comes down to the inmate side of things by bloods. And the prisons I've seen definitely were as well. But on September 5th, Gibson was notified that he was going to be transferred to a single cell, which he again reportedly threatened his cellmate's life. Following an interview and a medical evaluation with the cellmate, Gibson was charged with rape, aggravated indecent assault, and involuntary deviant sexual intercourse. But this is a prime example to all them correctional officers, you know? You hear an inmate saying he's going to take someone's cheeks or kill him, you should take it seriously. And they probably, you know, thought it was going to be serious, but didn't care. You know, a lot of COs are like that. They enjoy hearing what the hell's about to happen to that guy that's housed in a cell with someone he shouldn't be. It's kind of like watching Faces of Death in real time for some of these COs. They love it. And sometimes, you know, it's just an honest mistake. But those situations are a little more rare in my book. But traveling to Lycoming County Prison, the same state, unfortunately, Pennsylvania, it says inmate Alan Arthur Frazier was charged this week with sexually assaulting another inmate in the cell the two shared earlier this month. Although the victim told him to stop, Frazier, 41, allegedly engaged in deviant sexual acts with him. Even though he did not want to be a part of it, the victim complied because he was scared and is a lot smaller than Frazier. The investigator noted that Frazier weighs nearly 100 pounds more than the other inmate and is about a foot taller than him. The victim stated that during the sexual assault, which occurred on the night of March 3rd, he just kept his eyes looking at the wall. When it was over, Frazier told a fellow inmate, "This is between us, you hear me?" The victim said that he couldn't sleep the rest of the night, and this is very eerie. It says that he stayed up all night reading a book that Frazier, you know, the person that attacked him, was writing called Bad Decisions. Frazier gave the victim these little blue notebooks to read when he first arrived at the prison, telling him that he was in the process of writing a book. Can you imagine that? The guy was nice and friendly when he first came into the cell, gave him a couple books to read, and probably was opening up to him. Next thing you know, he's trying to butter him up for a different kind of biscuit. And that's what he did, but it's really wild to think that the dude's still reading the homeboy's books. Man, I would have tried to take him out with the book. Cause of death, paper cut. Never seen such a thing in prison. That's what they would have wrote about me. I'm just playing, man. I don't think you do that with no paper, but either way, Frazier has now been charged with felony sexual assault as well as indecent exposure and indecent assault. Crazy to think, huh? Not to me. You need to go watch an interview I did with King Frank from Pennsylvania. Don't want to go to the Pink Palace, my friends. And that article I just got done reading was from this month. So all these kind of activities is still going on these recent days. Including this one. It says an inmate at the Eau Claire County Jail faces charges of allegedly sexually assaulting a former cellmate. Daniel McGee, 46, was charged with second-degree sexual assault Friday. A note alerted police to the assault. According to the criminal complaint, when interviewed by police, the victim said that McKee threatened to stab him if he told anyone about the incident. The victim also said that McKee had previously shown him a shank made out of a sharpened plastic spork. McKee is currently being held in Eau Claire County Jail. He is due in court next Friday. Homeboy got what he needed with the sharpened plastic spork. And last but not least, traveling to Oregon Department of Corrections. What the hell is going on in there? It says a convicted killer who transitioned from male to female while in prison was awarded a large settlement with the Oregon Department of Corrections after a lawsuit claiming abuse by staff while housed in a male prison. Zero Lola Zombie. What the hell kind of name is that? A biological male who has been housed in the Woman's Coffee Creek Correctional Facility since April 2025 won a $295,000 settlement stemming from a 2021 lawsuit. Zombie, whose birth name is Daniel Lee Smith. Yeah, I'd probably want to change that basic ass name too. I would have thrown Vega in the mix somewhere. But Daniel Lee Smith, also known as Zombie, was convicted of first-degree manslaughter after pleading guilty to beating his girlfriend, Samantha Lee Brown, to death in 2014. Zombie received 20 years in prison for the killing and 15 more years for a first-degree assault after a violent attack on a fellow inmate. Damn, he must have beat that guy senseless or stabbed him a few times to get 15 clip added to his sentence. It says Zombie won't be released from prison until 2049, but I can guarantee with that $249,000, I believe is what they said, he's going to be eating good until then. The Oregonian reported that Zombie came out as transgender in 2020 and began taking sex change hormones. In 2022, Zombie began the process of seeking a sex change surgery in prison. Zombie claimed that he was repeatedly sexually assaulted by a cellmate at the Oregon State Penitentiary, and further sexual assaults at the hands of 2 different cellmates at Two Rivers Correctional Facility. In 2023, a judge designated Zombie as a vulnerable person, forcing the prison to allow Zombie to live in a single-person cell. Man, that's a wild story there, ain't it? I don't even know what to say about that, you know what I mean? Other than, look, it doesn't matter who you are, what gender you choose. Someone's willing to take something you got, especially if it's jiggling right when they're doing the drive-by past the showers. If you don't know what a prison drive-by is, man, you need to go ahead and run back some of my older videos. Yep, like I said, if they like what they seen enough, sooner or later, they're gonna come get it for real. And if I were to guess, every last one of those prison myths have been busted today. This shit still happens, man. You need to stay the hell out of there if you ain't built like that. And even if you are, you need to stay out as well. But the weaker individuals don't know how to fight, or scrawny, barely lift up 20 pounds. Chances are those inmates are going to be fighting not with you, but for you. They all want a piece of that snack. So the best thing for everybody to do is just avoid prison at all costs, and that means taking that straight and narrow. Try to avoid all those physical altercations, walk away, or run if need be. If you ain't got that much money, oh well, man, don't go out there and start robbing somebody. I promise after you get found guilty and you do about a year bid and you still got 16 to do, you'll regret it and then probably remember watching this episode of me telling you not to damn do it. If you're having woman problems or anything like that, revert back to rule number 1. Walk away, or if need be, run. Gotta know when to hold them and when to fold them, ladies and gentlemen, is what I'm trying to say. The last thing you want is to be put into a cell. It's one of the worst things you can possibly experience on earth. It's like being dead but alive at the same time. But stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Tomorrow I got another shocker coming your way. You ain't gonna believe it. But as always, until the next time, y'all be easy, be safe, and more importantly than anything, stay free and eating these eggs and bacon, ladies and gentlemen.